Blade is a fun character for comic book nerds. The monster movies type monsters don't always seem as fun. There's Vampirella. For me, that's about it. Captain America fights a werewolf at one point, was a Nazi werewolf. I've never been a fan of Morbius. Spider-Man is light-hearted. And there's Al Ray Kurt Connors. Man-Bat is kind of fun. What if Batman was a real Batman? The point is, it's fun to watch Blade. Blade is a vampire that doesn't have any of the weaknesses of a vampire. Blade can walk around in sunlight, but he still needs blood. Blade also kills vampires, which might make him an anti-hero. He also doesn't go around biting necks like a traditional vampire. When I was thinking about this essay, I found myself trying to figure out what kind of character this was. The movie starts with Blade shooting and cutting down a room full of vampires, and when they die, they go up in flames. The visual is usually used if a vampire walks out into the sunlight. In Blade, his sword and weapons are incinerators. The more I thought about the story, I realised Blade is actually a plague doctor. Plague doctors were sometimes doctors that carried the infection as well. They would go into infectious areas and treat the sick. The plague doctor was an identity known to carry death, partially because of outdated treatment practices like bloodletting. It paints a picture. Created in 1973 for Marvel Comics by the writer Marv Wolfman and artist Gene Colan as a supporting character. In the 1970s comic The Tomb of Dracula, the comic Blade used teakwood knives and was much more the everyman in his behaviour and attitude. Though courageous and brave, he displayed flaws as well, such as an inability to get along with certain other supporting cast members and a hatred of vampires that bordered on fanaticism. The character was not originally a daywalker, but a human being immune to being turned into a vampire. Lacking the superhuman speed and strength of his undead quarry, he relied solely on his wits and skill until he was bitten by the character Morbius, as seen in Peter Parker. Spider-Man #8, the film portrayal of Blade, was updated for a 90s audience, and the comics character was subsequently modified to match. Goya replaced the daggers Blade used in the comics with a sword and gave him a more samurai-like aesthetic. The film's version of Deacon Frost also differs greatly from his comic counterpart. He was older, with white hair and a literal church deacon, but the film retains Frost's upstart ambitions. And so in the story, Blade saves a doctor working in a hospital. She becomes the love interest of the story. The moment when they're driving the muscle car over the bridge is actually my favourite part of the movie. She gets to know Blade and his vampire hunting partner, Whistler, and starts to become part of the team. Her input was the injection that explodes vampire blood. Blade clashes with Frost in this movie. Frost's plan is to take Blade's blood and make daywalker vampires. In that scenario, the vampires rule the world and people live in the shadows. With his plan might be enough to make Frost the lead vampire, but in this film, Frost kills the upper council and gains new vampire powers. He also destroys Blade's home and kidnaps his girlfriend. Frost made everything go wrong in Blade's life. Was the story is a versus story. The characters operate from hidden camps. It's like a deadly serious game of poker, and by the end, Frost's thirst for power allowed the vampire plague to be consolidated in his camp. Blade ends all the vampires by beating Frost, and Frost rules the world by beating Blade. The stakes are really high. This movie can be really neat. When thinking of Blade, it made me think, what kind of person wants to take it upon themselves to cleanse the world? Another neat aspect is that plague doctors fell behind in terms of medicine. They relied on practices like bloodletting when the rest of the world moved on to try medicines, vaccines, and whatnot. It's the image of someone solving a problem by cutting, but those same doctors risk their lives to go into infected areas. Those plagues aren't around anymore. The doctors that treated the infected protected themselves by using that costume, but many were already infected themselves. What kind of person looked to heal people as they were dying? It's someone that values life. And I think this film is saying value life. Blade beats the bad guy in the end. He walks in the light. Thanks again, film.